Hey there, welcome to episode 152 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I'm your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 1:25 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here in Greater Vegas on Tuesday, January 13, 2026. We publish on Tuesdays, usually earlier in the day, but today it will be later in the day. That's the way it is. Later in the day. My voice is on its own today. If you're not familiar with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation or perhaps the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, you've come to the right place, let me tell you. We, the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, are a Nevada nonprofit corporation. We were founded in June of 2022. We became a 501c3 public charity in October of 2022, and we are in our fourth fiscal year as of July 1st, 2025. So here we are. Our purpose statement is to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. Sounds fairly generic, but innovation can take many forms. We don't presume code nor tech. We were the Code for Vegas Foundation, which was itself a reboot of the Code for Vegas Brigade, which was formerly a part of Code for America. I don't know if it was technically a brigade because it was fairly early in those days, so it may not have been called a brigade, but it was essentially part of Code for America. We rebooted as a standalone Nevada nonprofit corporation and then eventually a public charity, and then we renamed to be less divisive. I'm not a coder, can I participate was a question we received more than once. We realized innovation it can indeed take many forms, and it goes nicely with the Greater Vegas branding scheme. We have an innovation district. We used to have our monthly hackathon meetups at the International Innovation Center downtown. The city of Las Vegas maintains a website called innovate.vegas, which is not, I'll use the word maintain loosely. I won't say that it's up to date, but the innovation is a thing here in Vegas. Will it be a real thing? That remains to be seen. But we are a real organization. The Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. 152 episodes in, we talk about our initiatives, our projects, our participants, if there are any, the current civic volunteer winter, our search for board members, our various pain points that we could address, hackathons, what is a hackathon? The list goes on and on and on. Open data. That's how our organization got its start back in the day. Code for Vegas was working with Code for America and the City of Las Vegas on the open data platform that still exists today. It's hosted on ArcGIS. I've talked about it in previous episodes, and we will talk about that again at some point. And so here we are, 152 episodes in. Today we are talking about office hours and gatherings and calendars. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which includes the show notes, or which contains the show notes, which includes a summary, which I'll read to you. It is one sentence. And the links, which I will not read to you, although I will mention them. And then we can get on with the show. So I will begin now. The summary of today's episode: office hours return to weekly. That's starting today. Trying out a new event platform for optional RSVPs, but really we are looking for more serious calendar coordination, as you may have heard previously. This is a topic I talk about now and then. The links, as usual, we have two websites. One is aimed at the actual civic volunteer space, our activities and so on. That's innovateforvegas.org. And our foundation, which is a Nevada nonprofit corporation, so it's a business and it has all of the formalities and so on. That's at our innovateforvegas.foundation website. Innovate for Vegas is spelled out FOR, no spaces, innovateforvegas.org.foundation. I'm trying to reduce the amount of upfront reading of things that you can just click on. So there you go. Happy New Year again. So it's a new year. Hopefully it will be a happy one eventually. In the meantime, we are bringing back the weekly office hours gathering. Yay! We moved to alternate weeks for the winter holiday season. That's on the calendar, not the civic volunteer winter. And as expected, we had 0 attendance for November, December. We moved to alternate weeks because of that. Nobody's coming to our meetups and participating in family visits and travel and so on. While this is fine, we need to adjust how we manage gatherings and gathering time when nobody shows. We have always had a drop-in model without requiring RSVPs, and this has been reasonably successful, with about half or 3/4 of our meetings taking place with at least one person joining in, sometimes two. I think we've had as many as three. I'm trying to think if there was, maybe we've had four, but I think two or three is a typical maximum. It could be more, but I think that's a good amount, a good number of people for an actual conversation. Usually, if nobody shows up in the first 30 minutes and we had the meeting, this was the indicated meeting duration on our gatherings calendar. So it started at 6 p.m. and it ended at 6:30 p.m. The meeting would adjourn and on with the week. This is also why the office hours are on Tuesdays. We moved them from Thursdays a while ago. So the week starts there, and if nobody shows, we get on with the week. No harm, no foul. Get on with the stuff. When our initiative meetup returns, it will return to Mondays for a similar reason, though having that meeting at the week start helps also to fit in with the iteration. We have a typical 2-week iteration schedule, so having the meeting on Monday helps kick off a new iteration. And then there's a Monday for mid-course, and then another Monday to wrap it up and then start the next iteration, perhaps. That's another conversation for another time. So let's talk about calendars and meetups in general. The discovery and engagement are the big challenges. Well, first, the challenge with meetup events, with smaller and newer meetups in particular. So like if you want to kick off a brand new meetup that no one's ever heard of, or maybe you have an ongoing meetup, but it's, 5 or 6 people. The big challenge is getting the word out so people are aware of it at all, so that they know about your meetup, especially if it is not a frequently recurring meetup. A quarterly gathering, for example, might barely make it onto the radar without a big megaphone to help out. So if we were to have our office hours every quarter instead of every week, the odds of people knowing that it even existed would be nearly zero. Our board meetings were monthly, they're open, although our directors didn't even show up towards the end there. And that's one of the reasons they're no longer on the board. So quarterly gatherings, tricky. Monthly, weekly, or bi-weekly, a little bit more likely. Getting the word out, big challenge. Discovery. Once an event is discovered, someone who would like to attend or participate will probably want to join or request to join the event, or maybe it's an open one for all and no RSVP is required. So maybe a sign up of some kind is still useful, even if optional, so that the organizer has some idea. Whatever the case, this is where the paradox of choice can really bring some pain. If one publishes an event on multiple platforms to get that reach for discovery, then what? Maybe you create a Facebook event, a Discord event, a Meetup event, an Eventbrite event, a LinkedIn event, and so on. And now there are many ways for an interested party to add themselves to the roles, the people intending to participate or attend, maybe in more than one place. Whoops. Oh, I signed up for the LinkedIn and the Facebook events, even though they're the same. Once someone has signed up to participate, we now have a channel, maybe more than one, if they signed up on more than one platform, to reach our participants. If we need to change a venue, adjust the time, or maybe even postpone or cancel a gathering entirely. Enabling this communication is more valuable than some realize, but it is key, and it also includes a critical baseline capability, the reminder. Do you send a notification assuming a mobile device, send an email, a text message, maybe all of these as a user selectable option perhaps? Do we want to add more to the incoming attention sinks that many of us deal with on the daily? So you run the risk of sending an email, for example, or yet another phone ding. The meeting got moved, the gathering, they're moving into a different coffee shop or whatever the case may be. One example, though, at the other end of that spectrum, I joined a LinkedIn event that was scheduled for 9 o'clock this morning, but I joined it, I signed up for it, I guess, last week. And then this morning at 10 a.m., I said, oh, that's right. That was at 9 a.m. It was a YouTube webinar style, so it wasn't like a Zoom call or something. I can watch it after the fact. I can't participate in the chat, obviously. It was a meetup about open source projects, so, or a webinar. So not overly disappointing or disappointed, but now I could have added the event to my calendar. That is a LinkedIn option. But because I didn't, I kind of assumed, well, maybe I'll get like a direct message from LinkedIn events as a reminder or something. No. So a little reminder of sorts that LinkedIn sort of halfway on the whole event landscape. Not overly impressed, but you may have heard my previous opinions on LinkedIn in general, so it kind of fits in with the scheme. So the meetups and gatherings and event signups in general, it's been around for a while. There are some existing platforms. Meetup.com, is at the center of the civic volunteer organization universe, for better or worse, possibly in part because Code for America owned most, if not all, of the Code for and Hack for and similar cohort names. No, they didn't own Hack for LA. Code for Sacramento, Code for Philly, Code for Chicago, probably, Code for Vegas, Hack for Reno. So Code for America owned those names and their accounts on meetup.com. This was one way to build up a population of interested individuals, though two major problems with this approach of having your name owned by someone else but also managed by a platform like Meetup. First of all, Code for America retained ownership of the group for Code for Vegas, for example, and thus the contacts who had joined the various cohort events. So anyone who, I think we had 166 people who had joined the Code for Vegas group on meetup.com when it was Code for Vegas. 10 years ago, which meant as the brigade program was sunset 2 years ago now, I think, was when it was actually ended for real. Those meetup groups went zombie, and ours was zombie long before that, without much, if any, ability to engage the interested parties. So we have no access to the Code for Vegas group. We have no access to the contact information and whatnot. And then over the years, Meetup has constricted their the ability for people to see who is in a group without paying them money, without having a pro account or being whatever it is. And that's changed over the years. So, and that leads to the second problem. Even if Code for America had transferred ownership of cohort accounts to organizations such as ours, so if we gained management rights or ownership of the Code for Vegas Meetup group on Meetup, Meetup still retains control of this contact list unless it could be exported in some way. Meetup has changed ownership maybe 3 times over the years. Who knows what their policies were and are. But basically, just like LinkedIn, just like so many of these platforms, they want to be in the middle of communications. Their communication features are also a little bit wonky. I don't know if they still have the chat feature, presumably so you could send people real time, like, oh, hey, we're over here. Hey, did anyone see the whatever? So you could actually have a chat room centered on your event. It was not implemented well, and it was yet another. There's an old adage. I think Jamie Zwinski said this one also. All applications continue to evolve until they can send email. So eventually, everything has some sort of a messaging component, for better or worse. And if you must have the Meetup app installed, or it becomes like yet another thing. So being tied to Meetup for your Meetup needs, aside from the fact that the name works, can be a limiting factor in your overall engagement strategies. And one more thing, Meetup is not free and is arguably not cheap. The price monthly now, I haven't really looked, but it's not free. And if you, I think you can do a trial, but for a nonprofit org like ours, free definitely fits our budget better. So Eventbrite and similar platforms are also available, lesser known. I mean, everybody knows about Eventbrite. I know. There used to be Evite. I think there was at least 1 or 2 other kind of high profile event sites for sending out invitations, and you could have a profile page with all of your events listed, and then it would help you discover other events. Eventbrite does that as well. So does Meetup, for that matter. These tend to be aimed more typically at paid events, but by no means limited to those. So I think we actually have an Eventbrite account, which didn't help us at all. But I might explore that as well as part of this experiment. So discovery and engagement may be among a different population, people that are looking for paid events, perhaps. They could be webinar style or business oriented meetups and so on. Might also be something more along the lines of concerts or performances or paid. I think that fits the Eventbrite model better, although not exclusively. Then we have events on various social media and social network platforms. If there's even a difference anymore, I think social networking is now a component of social media. Again, everything at this point, I think the quote would be everything evolves to become a social media platform. But most notable in this universe is probably LinkedIn and the LinkedIn event feature, where events are attached to a social media account. So, for example, I could create an event myself. I could create an event on behalf of Innovate for Vegas Foundation or any other companies or whatever, however that works. I've never actually created a LinkedIn event because I'll describe, I already described one problem. But yeah, so the people that see the event may be limited to the number of people following or connected to you or your business if you have a company page. So it may not be good for engaging the larger population, depending on what you're looking for. That may be ideal, or maybe it's like, yeah, we really want to reach people that I have not connected with on LinkedIn or who do not follow my page. I'd like to engage my geographical community, my proximal neighbors, my distal neighbors. So events are attached, though, to the social media account and are used. It's just another way to retain users on a particular platform. I think Discord, when I first saw that they enabled events, like, okay, so you kind of have to join the Discord server to see okay, I see. Yeah, you really want to, it's like the casino model, ironically, here in Vegas. Once you come in, they want to make sure you don't know what time it is or where the exits are. Oh, we can schedule events right at your slot machine. This means that various platforms, and I have not come close by any means to identifying all of them here, may allow adding an event to one's calendar, but they, as I suggested earlier with LinkedIn, but they really want to keep you and your participants on the platform. So you really want to keep them visiting LinkedIn for, to discuss the event, to post images or other information after the fact, and so on. This is the same with Meetup. They have Meetup comments. You can comment on the group, or you can comment on an individual event. You can post photos and so on. Which means light support for calendaring standards and maybe limited notification and communication features, again, perhaps tied to the particular platform in question. So Meetup, you can, if you join a group, I think you can send an event to your calendar. So your Google or Yahoo or Apple or Outlook, or they all support iCalendar and CalDave, by the way. Those do. So light support means you may be able to send yourself a calendar event, so you'll get a calendar reminder if you have those set up, which I'm actually a fan of, but that's a separate step. So it actually, rather than subscribing to a calendar, you're adding an event to your calendar. So I call this a calendar fork, like a fork in the road. Your calendar event may or may not remain connected in any way to the original calendar, so that you may or may not receive cancellation or time change or other updates and so on. Depends on what they've implemented and how. So sometimes left to chance. And in the case of my LinkedIn meeting that linked up, it was a LinkedIn event, but it pointed to a YouTube stream. It was streamed live, and now I can still see the stream, of course. So the LinkedIn event was used for the discovery and initial engagement, but the actual event was held, and this is pretty common with online events, right? You're going to be hosting on, Zoom, or we use Jitsi, or maybe a Google Meet, etc. Right? YouTube, Twitch, wherever. Then we have the lower tier of functionality and quality, platforms and feature sets and so on. So as far as engagement and accuracy and whatnot, they're not as good. They're not as well thought out, I think. which includes event promotion sites that scrape other websites like Meetup to republish event information, or blog style announcements and summaries, which might list events as plain old text, maybe as a bullet list. I've seen that recently, like, oh, here's a list of upcoming events, and they literally just give you a list of, oh, on this date, this will be here, and this. So it kind of leaves it to the user to figure out what's going on. If they include a link to the relevant event, that's helpful, but not always. So it's kind of a mess. Yeah, it makes me laugh a little bit. Like, oh, it actually adds work to I want to go to this event, but I have to go on a little quest to find what's going on. I've seen it mentioned here on this. Yeah. Anyway, here the discovering event might get a little boost. Like, at least I know about it, but I don't know where it is or what's going on. I have to do a little bit of hunting. But arguably, perhaps the worst version of these are sites or platforms which scrape events and then enable sharing a calendar event that is now forked to this particular platform. So there's a platform here in Vegas that does this. They use a WordPress event plugin, and they create events on the platform, even though they say, here's a link to the original event. But if you add the event to your calendar, you are adding an event that is, say, owned. The organizer is this platform, not the original organizer. So you've literally forked the calendar. I don't know if they've made any changes to this lately. I avoid that platform because it's not good. But the take home is, hey, add this event to the calendar. Well, is it the original event, or is it an event that you have like a copy that is divorced from the original, so that if it gets and this, I ran into with this platform. One of the reasons I avoid it, they posted an event on their platform one of my events, and I said, hey, the time is wrong. And then another time the venue's changed. So you have all the information is incorrect for this post. So that's how, and then of course share this on your calendar. You've now shared a completely incorrect piece of information with somebody who was probably interested in my event, but you gave them anyway. So just avoid the CalDAV and iCalendar standards. And there are several RFCs, request for comment documents out there outlining how these work. And I have a list of them somewhere that I can talk about more in the future. These enable calendar subscriptions, RSVP propagation, status propagation. So a cancellation, for example. So if someone is subscribed to your or my calendar and I cancel an event, or I need to change, and actually I don't like the way Google handles event cancellations, but you can have an event on your calendar that is marked as canceled, but leave it on the calendar as canceled, like strike through, oh, okay, I'm not going crazy. The event didn't disappear. It's just canceled, right? Yes, there was going to be an event tomorrow morning that is canceled, right? That connects with the user that, oh yes, that's right. It should be an option anyway, right? I should be able to see that the event, I'm not going crazy. I did accept that event invitation and it has been canceled. Okay, I see what's going on here. I should optionally be able to say, remove it from my calendar if it's been canceled, or allow me to see the canceled events in a different view of my, whatever the case may be. But anyway, being able to cancel a calendar event is important. But if I have created a copy of the event and I don't provide that update, then my canceled event may be on your calendar from the other platform as still happening. It's one of many issues. And notifications in general are useful, because if you need to send out an announcement, hey, don't forget to bring your umbrella, whatever. I could speak for hours of this, but I will not today. So our experiment in this area, our office hours started as an experiment itself to show existing brigades as they were being sunset. And I was actually having a discussion in the Alliance of Civic Technologists Discord server with, I think it was two or three, about like, oh, we need to pay for a Zoom subscription, or we need to. I said, no, you can literally, using Jitsi, which has been an open source platform for 15, 20 years, forever. I interviewed the CEO of 8x8. He's no longer with the company. I think he moved on. But I interviewed the CEO of 8x8 when they were in Sunnyvale, when I was doing the Radio Sunnyvale podcast collection of programs. So I had heard about Jitsi way back then. So that was 2008, maybe 8x8. So telephony services and whatnot. So I said, I could spin up a Jitsi account and a meetup right now for free. You could sign in with your GitHub account, for example. They used to not require sign in or sign out. Like you didn't have to create an account. You could just spin up a video conference, chat, call, whatever. Probably that led to some issues, right? So we'll just say, okay, you should be a minimally responsible party to create a meetup. So you sign up with your GitHub account or whatever. There were a couple of different options for a sign-on account creation. Literally like 3 clicks and you're up. Oh, I'd like to create a recurring meetup. So I want to have one URL that persists across. Okay, do that. Bam, done. And so on. So the whole point of the original office hours was a demonstration of just how easy it was to do for free. And there are a few practical limitations, in fact, to a free Jitsi Meet, I believe it's called, account and recurring gatherings and so on. Rather than relying on Zoom accounts, which were paid for by Code for America, but then, of course, were no longer paid for, our meetup stuck and has been variously attended over the years. So this was, I think it's been 2.5 years probably. And we split off our initiative meetup. So instead of having just a one catch-all, which is common with civic volunteer organizations, civic tech, they'll just have like a weekly or bi-weekly meetup, and it's anything. So it's like an onboarding phase and sort of a what's going on in the world, any questions, whatever. And then they break up into rooms to discuss different projects they're working on and so on. So it kind of makes for a long one-shot meetup, and it may or may not be inviting to people who want to know what's going on from a higher level. Give me the 50,000 foot. I have questions about how this works. I don't know anything about programming. I don't, so whatever. So I think splitting them up is, it's another part of our experiment, I suppose. So we now have an initiative meetup where it is technical. It's more hands-on, not necessarily coding, but it is, here's what we are working on. If you are working on this initiative or this component project, we can have a room set up. Neither of these require RSVPs, although the initiative meetup, we're going to move to a more RSVP centric model because no RSVP can be problematic in general if you're committing time to something and then nobody shows up. It's not unduly troublesome. We just bail if nobody shows up. But people don't always check calendars if there's no RSVPs. So they don't always know if an event has been canceled. And so enabling that communication channel is useful. And then for something that's a little bit more formal, such as our an initiative meetup, here we're going to be hopefully interacting with people working on initiatives. And as I will say later, it aligns with iteration planning. So having that as a separate, more formal, like you should tell people that you're going to attend. Don't just not show up or show up every few months if you feel like it, right? That's a little bit, and I've talked about this before. It's about respecting the time of other civic volunteers, right? So some form of accountability, and it depends on the context. So for our office hours, optional is fine. If people subscribe, then they'll find out more about upcoming events if they're curious. And the intent for office hours, by the way, is not to attend. I mean, you can. There's nothing preventing. But office hours are more like, hey, I want to know more. And then once you know more, you decide if you want to work on an initiative or a component project, part of an initiative. Or maybe you want to join our board, or maybe you want to know more about collaboration, and we'll set up a separate meeting, like one-on-one or something. So office hours are not intended to be the catch-all. And that was another problem we ran into last year, was our board members, the two who are no longer on our board, they would treat the office hours like a board meeting that they could just not show up to or show up to as they felt like, whatever their mood was. And so you end up with like an asymmetry in commitment. So office hours should not be a replacement for a structured or a responsible meeting, right? Hey, I want to have a meeting with you, but I'll just come to your office hours, and that way I don't have to schedule or be responsible for showing up. I'll just show up and take your time or not. So that it's easier to go down that path, and kind of want to avoid that. Lesson learned. So right now we're testing out an up-and-comer, maybe. They're pretty established at this point. I think people have heard of Luma, Luma. I think they have a short name, lu.ma, but it's luma.com. I think it's just luma.com, which offers a convenient free tier of service. That's good. It looks interesting enough to sample for our use cases that I've described here, and maybe also for our public board meetings and other parts of the business side of our organization. So right now we're just starting out with office hours, which are like we could do a foundation office hours, and that would be much more about business and business collaboration and joining the board and so on. So that like maintaining that separation of concerns could be a thing. But right now we're just starting with innovateforvegas.org has an account on Luma, and I've added today's office hours meeting as just to get familiar with how the interface works and so on. I'm seeing more Vegas events appearing on Luma, not a ton, but big things have small beginnings, right? So they got to start somewhere. I did see several, but not an overwhelming number, maybe a dozen CES related events last week. So using Luma might help with outreach and discovery, even in these early days. It provides something that people can subscribe to that they may be using. So it could be a meetup replacement, successor replacement, maybe a replacement, but that remains to be seen. We will continue to use our Google Calendar for gatherings in conjunction with Luma for the time being. The problem when you make, and I described this earlier with Meetup, when you make a third-party platform, the source of truth for a calendar or participants, the people that join the group, now you have to deal with data export, data portability. The same may happen with Luma. You know, if you sign up and you, I think Luma will share email addresses. So if you sign up with Luma, you have a Luma user account and you want to RSVP to our office hours, do I have access to your email address later if I want to move to another platform? Can I notify you that we're moving, etc.? So that's something, I mean, you know, we're on day one. So we'll see. We'll see what they actually enable. Luma does not look perfect. They have an API, but only for the paid tier, so you can't use it. I can't use it for like automating well, I think they do support calendar sync, so that's something I want to explore. I didn't want to do it today, but I'll do it through the week because I'm curious to see what they actually implement of calendar synchronization. The CalDAV standard does support calendar synchronization between calendar servers. That's how calendars work in the established standard protocol universe that we live in. If I subscribe to your Outlook calendar on my Google Calendar, the servers talk to each other using CalDAV, and they can share information about cancellations and updates and so on, so that I always have the latest version of your calendar event, your entire calendar probably, so that if you update your calendar, I see it updated on my calendar. It's like it's a good idea that people keep re-implementing in vertical silos to retain their users. So why would I want my Facebook events to synchronize with my LinkedIn events? Oh, they might, who knows? I don't know what the world of these platforms is right now for sync, but I will tell you, Facebook used to supply some Open Graph support. I mean, Open Graph itself supports events. So you would be able to, in your share of a link, if it was an event link, the Open Graph data would have the start time, the end time, the location, et cetera, et cetera. So Facebook stopped supporting that on the Facebook platform a long time ago. So now a Facebook event, if you shared a Facebook event, it would not publish nor would it consume the Open Graph event data. That's unfortunate, but such is life. So when you post an event somewhere that supports Open Graph data, maybe they'll also support schema.org, like graph data. If you can do that, now when I share an event with someone, they would have direct access to the particulars. Oh, cool event. It starts at 3:00 in the afternoon tomorrow online. Okay, bam, bam, bam. So to be able to share structured data, you kind of get around the whole bulleted list of opaque, human readable data, but not useful for calendar inclusion and so on. Anyway, so I don't want to go too far down this road, but the take home is Luma supports some of these things. It looks like you can, it looks like they support iCalendar for sync. When I created an event, I get an email with the event details, so it gets added to my calendar. If you have that configured for your email and calendar tools, Google Workspace enables this, and we do have a Google Workspace account as part of our nonprofit stuff. So the idea would be to manage events in our own calendar and enable a platform like Luma to sync with our calendar, including changes and cancellations and notifications regarding those, and or propagate calendar subscriptions to our own calendar rather than forking the event, as I described earlier. So if you RSVP to a Luma event, that RSVP should appear in our calendar as someone who has kind of accepted an invitation, right? So we'll see. I want to play with this, just not right now, because our call is in 4 hours. But this is the road that I would like to wander down and see what works. So if we can manage our calendar, so the notion, which I'll get to in a moment, but generally speaking, the notion would be I should be able to manage my calendar. Calendars are a thing we all have in our pockets. If you have a mobile phone, a mobile device, you probably have a calendar application. If it talks to Apple, by the way, is the sort of origin author, the original author of the iCalendar protocol, the data format, the what do you call it? vCalendar, yeah. So vCards, vCalendar. So they did the vCalendar, and it fits into, it's an extension to the WebDave standard that moves them around. So they took CalDave, which is a different standard that Microsoft and Google and Apple all support. They said, hey, we should be able to move these around just like contact information in a vCard. So vCalendar, iCalendar streams, Apple has played a substantial role in that. So if Google and Apple and Microsoft, which are three of the big platforms, Yahoo, other calendar providers, calendar servers, calendar clients, if they can all speak this common language, then we should be able to move data around without introducing yet another platform, yet another thing to sign up for, yet another notification source and all that. So that's part of the motivation here. So if they propagate the subscriptions and I can see a list of RSVPs and I can send them a notification from me rather than having to log in to, this was the paradox of choice. Oh, now I got to go to LinkedIn, I got to go to Facebook and Discord and Slack and whatever, and I got to send a notification, or I got to, if you can have these services synchronized with your authoritative source of truth calendar using these existing protocols, wouldn't that be nice? Now you have a consistent interface on as an organizer on your side, and then the people that want to attend your meeting don't need to sign up for yet. I got to sign up in your Discord server to see the no. Just use your calendar. You can share the calendar event anywhere, and people can see the calendar event wherever, and then say, "Oh, I'd like to attend that," and propagate that RSVP. So that's a finer point. So what the actual workflow is, we'll need to explore a little bit to make sure that works as I'm describing. It basically does, but it's all in the implementation. So we'll see. And I'm literally 1 day in on trying this out. So there will be a follow-up next month or so, perhaps, maybe 6 weeks from now, to see how this is working out, to see what Luma actually does and how it fits into the scheme. By the way, if Luma does almost exactly what I want, but it also interoperates in some standard way using the protocols and communications that I've described, it would still be good to be familiar with that so that it fits into the grand scheme of things in our actual plans. This is the final section of today's audio program. So our actual plans. As I've mentioned previously over the course of the last 152 episodes here and there, at least once or twice though, at least, our smart calendar component of Smart Social, the Smart Social initiative, is really what would work out nicely, in my own opinion. So actual CalDave and iCalendar support, including propagation of RSVPs and peer calendar sync, so across servers. This is what calendars do now, but it would be a calendar that we would have direct access to the server side. So we can also add, the idea would be to have these servers be redeployable. Rather than using a WordPress plugin, you should be able to deploy your own calendar server. You can find these out there in the world, but have it integrate so that they talk to each other as a matter of course, whether or not you're subscribed. So you basically would want to synchronize community calendars regardless of subscription at the server level, so that you could discover events regardless of which service you're looking at or where, so if the city, for example, if the city of Las Vegas and the city of North Las Vegas and the city of Henderson and the city of Mesquite and unincorporated Clark County, so maybe Paradise and Enterprise, maybe all these different localities have their own community calendars. I don't know if Enterprise and Paradise do, but Clark County has a calendar, city of Las Vegas. So if all those calendars would synchronize on any given platform, you would ideally be able to say, oh, okay, Clark County's having an event and City of Las Vegas is doing, there's a whole bunch of stuff happening on Tuesday, so I should try to organize my event for Wednesday. So rather than having to visit all these sites, if I can just go and collect all these events without subscribing to calendars, but just make the calendars visible and discoverable, now I have the utilities at my disposal to enable my own awareness, engagement, or to organize around other popular days and so on. Like, oh, I didn't know there was 25 events on Tuesday. I just could have gone with Thursday, right? And there are some other things that fall out of that, but having a server that we can actually implement some of these specific features, not aside from the fact that maybe somebody has something similar, but it would be a learning experience, completely open source, etc. So, someone out there would say, why don't you just use, right? That's my counter to that would be, well, if you're a chef, why would you just use a canned sauce? Why do you have to make your own? The journey is part of the gift. So the calendar platform also, in addition to being a standalone part of Smart Social connects people and data. That's the whole notion. So it kind of distills it down to, I want to connect calendar, venue, human, traffic, whatever the data is. We want to have so when I say social, I don't mean Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I mean human data, human computer connection. So a social network. Computer, don't talk. Stop. No, stop. I'm not a fan of Alexa Plus. So, but the big thing would be, we want to integrate this. We want to we want the Smart Social concept to find its way into things like MyMuni and Welcome. So when we get those up and running, our information sharing platform for localities, either people who live there, MyMuni, my municipality, my community, or people visiting, Welcome, should be able to have access to calendar services that integrate with everything else, that can be programmed and integrated as we want and as others might want. So a calendar server that implements standards and which works in this larger scheme. So for example, implementing activity stream calendar events, which is something that has been discussed out in the world, but who makes use of it? Well, so the direction would be implement a server that may already be sort of available with similar feature sets, but make it such that we can extend it into the new directions that we want to head. Okay, all that said, if we can add calendar services automatically to MyMuni and Welcome, but even more interesting, let's add calendar services to challengers for notifying people when hackathons and other innovation events are, or open transit. So people have to this day, how do you know when your bus is going to be schedule change for a construction detour or special events or whatever the case is? Because they send out an email or something. Well, why does that not appear on a calendar? So if I know I'm going to be if I commute to work every day, another email might be useful. But if it shows up on my device as a calendar update, oh, okay, my bus is going to be 20 minutes late because they're adjusting the schedule. Oh, there's a big schedule change going into effect on January 2nd. Here's I'm subscribed to the calendar for the bus that I ride. I will know about that. Right. So having access to calendar services, not necessarily a generic calendar server, is part of this overall overarching set of goals. So yeah, connecting people and data in these programmable ways. It is the modern time. Modernity is a thing to make use of. And humans tend to lean towards human readable stuff, but there's so much computer readable infrastructure in place that we could take advantage of. And so that's part of that plan. Anyway, Luma might be a step towards this. And I will be interested to see how close Luma can get to what I am looking for as part of Smart Social. And then ultimately, some of the use cases I've just described now and others. Hey, it might do a lot of what I'm looking for, and it might fit into the Smart Social scheme for events and calendars, especially syncing server to server so that people could use their Luma groups and presence and so on as part of a peer-to-peer calendar sharing scheme in a locality. So, oh, you have to go and sign up for it. No. We'd like to be able to say, oh, you're using something that already works. We can integrate with that so that it will still already work. Wouldn't that be nice? So if it fits into the Smart Social scheme for events and calendars, that would be great. It'd be more than okay. It is important to separate free events, especially those organized or facilitated by individuals, nonprofits, and community elevating cohorts like ours, and those organized by companies and organizations which charge for tickets or similar to participate in their events. There are pay platforms out there. Eventbrite and Meetup support these. Eventbrite supports ticket sales specifically. I know that. Luma also supports ticket sales. Some I've mentioned here. So I don't know if LinkedIn supports a paid. I don't know if they manage it, because really it comes down to, I want to have an event. I want to sell tickets, but I don't want to have to create yet another thing to manage payments and payment processing. And so if they wrap that all up into one little feature, they take their percentage and you're on your way. I think the needs of users of those platforms are similar, but not quite the same as the needs of users I would like to work with in, say, a version 1 deployment of our Smart Social services and so on. So free events would be the main thing. Or, for example, bus route changes. Those are not specifically events. They would be on a calendar, but they're not, you don't have to pay for things and so on. So that's like a different usage model. The pay events are a specific version, but there are other versions of those workflows, if you like, that we would like to tackle first. So we don't need to encroach on the business of event websites and how they make their money. This would be a service or a feature that we could implement in our other things that we're pursuing. So MuniBits might include a standard calendar base that could be used in various ways, but still making use of these standard protocols rather than this WordPress plugin I described earlier, which is garbage. Sorry. So yeah, version 1, we were looking at this free and more about integration than monetization. Part of our purpose statement does imply that we want to play a role or play a part in making our communities better, right? It's right there on the tin, as they say. Connecting people definitely fits into there, and doing it for free does even more so. So rather than trying to monetize people gathering from a community health standpoint, from a, hey, it's good if people who want to meet up are able to meet up, and if they can discover each other and engage to coordinate and so on, so much the better. That is part of making communities better. Totally fits our plans. All this will take a while, especially during what I'm calling the civic volunteer winter, which is going on right now, but appears on no calendars as far as I'm aware. The Luma experiment is literally starting today, so I expect zero impact today. Like, will more people show up to our office hours today? Unlikely. But we can see how things work out over the next 4 to 6 weeks. And that's still not enough time to really try it, but that's, got to start somewhere. Small beginnings. We can assess engagement, feature set utility, and perhaps compatibility with the smart calendar ideas, some of which I've talked about today, that I will spend more time describing when we have a platform to point to. I think it's always better to show over telling when it comes to demoing this kind of stuff. In the meantime, we shall see how our return to weekly office hours kicks off for 2026. Go from there. I fully expect, so now I'm being much more explicit, I fully expect no one to show up today. So one of the problems with a no RSVP or optional RSVP, which we're now switching to, if no one RSVPs and I have a meeting time from 6 to 6:30, which I used to have. So it was a 6 to 6. So someone might look at that and say 30 minutes. Someone else might look at that and say, oh, it's office hours. It's 6:20. I can still jump on the call. And then I may have given up by then. So then they think, oh, nobody was there, I'm not going to go again. So that disconnection can be detrimental depending on what you're trying to accomplish. The optional RSVP scheme, but making it very visible to people that, hey, 3 people RSVP'd, or maybe these people RSVP'd, that would be an option about privacy. If a 4th person says, oh, 3 people are going to be there, they may show up. If those 3 people don't show up that RSVP'd, and that 4th person comes by and says, oh, there was no meeting, I'm front loading the description to say, hey, if nobody shows up, we reserve the right to call the meeting, adjourn. So I basically said in the 15 to 20 minute range, if nobody's there, if nobody shows up, I don't know if you heard me kind of burp right there. Sorry. If nobody shows up, just like, I don't know if you remember when you were in school, the teacher isn't here. We only have to stay for 10 minutes and then we can leave. Whatever the rules are on that. So after 15 or 20 minutes of hanging out, waiting to see if anybody shows up, time to move on, spend that time somewhere else. If somebody shows up at 6:19, great. The other tricky part, which I'm trying to be more clear about, because meetings really don't have like a variable ending time. So I've moved it. Now it says the meeting is from 6 to 7 to give people the notion, to plant that seed that, oh, okay, it's an actual meetup. An actual conversation can take place in an hour, sure. It may be canceled in the first 20 minutes if nobody shows up. Okay, fair enough. But I also want to be clear that if you show up at 6:20 and we talk for 3 hours, that's another possibility. So we have had meetups that have gone that long. So there's not really a hard ending time. But we also need to be clear with people that it's not a 10-minute meeting. So how do you convey that? And that's another reason to have this server possibility. We can add some X extensions to calendar properties that say like variable end time or whatever. So we can try to make it clear to people. So that's an experiment in the future. Like, hey, this meeting starts now. It may end if nobody shows up, but it may also go on for 6 hours, not just 1 hour. Probably not 6 hours. But these are the sorts of things where we can embrace the current calendar standards and then make use of some of the extensibility that's built into CalDave and iCalendar streams and some other elements of all this. And so, yeah, that's the deal. So that's today's episode in a nutshell. I got 55 minutes on my clock. That was a lot more talking about this than I planned. I was thinking 20 minutes. Anyway, we'll see if anybody shows up tonight. I'm sure, like I said, I'll talk about this again in 6 weeks or so, 4 to 6. I'll probably give it till the end of February. So that's about 6 weeks. And we'll see what happens between now and then ongoing. And that's about it. Thank you for listening as always. And thank you for considering visiting our office hours at some point. If you do have questions, or telling a friend, I wonder if there's any civic volunteer organizations in the Vegas area that are working on community elevation. Now you know. Or maybe you'll discover us on Luma, or maybe our smart calendar will be deployed and you'll be able to make use of that. Who knows? Maybe I do. All right. Thank you for listening as always. Take care and cross your fingers. Happy New Year. Bye-bye.